a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Duncan, Eberline, and Matari. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Public comment? Hearing none, we'll go into our first item and only item, Idaho Department of Lands encroachment permits. It's an action item, and who would like to start?
I can.
Okay, you just identify yourself.
My name is Mike Gamer. I work for Idaho Department of Lands. I'm in the dock permitting program.
Okay.
I believe we're here today to discuss some Spokane River encroachment permits to be specific. We refer to encroachments because docks encroach into the public's use of the waterway. So every time something goes in the water, it requires an encroachment permit, whether that be a single-family dock, a community dock, a marina, bank stabilization, which we call riprap, or even a water line. Those are kind of the common encroachments people have. We had a meeting, I believe, with this group. It was back in March. It was to kind of follow up on the application and permit we issued and received for Templeton's Marina. That was down in Post Falls by the dam down there. There was an expansion of that marina to approximately 114 slips, I want to say. And there was a lot of kind of there was some public outcry about that application, that process. And during that March meeting, we recognized and referenced to the group that there was 2 additional community dock applications that would be coming down the pipe in the near future. And we have one of them that is on the screen today. This is what is referred to as River's Edge Apartments on the Spokane River, pretty close to the Atlas Mill site. And the applicant has proposed a community dock system consisting of those different dock sets there on the shore. And I believe there'll be 74 slips associated with this. We are in the midst of the public commenting period. The public and agency comment period for this one ends August 4th. And it appears to meet our rules and regulations that we have for community docks. The 2 biggest ones for community docks for us is that their size is limited to 7 square feet of dock space for every lineal foot of frontage that they own. And then the second big thing for us would be that there's a 25-foot buffer from the edge of the western dock to the western property line or littoral line, and then 25 feet from the right east side and that property line. Those are kind of the 2 main criteria we have for community docks. The other one, which is probably another reason why we're here today, is also kind of line of navigability. Historically, community docks in commercial marinas do not have to abide by the line of navigability. The line of navigability is the distance at which all permitted encroachments extend out into the water. So if you were to think of a common shoreline that is just owned by a whole bunch of residents, everyone has a 65-foot dock, let's say. The line of navigability is 65 feet. A marina, our procedures state that we don't really need to follow that rule for marinas and community docks because they're much larger. You can imagine something like the Resort Marina or even Silver Beach Marina. You can't get a marina at 65 feet from shore. So it's like those go out much farther. However, in this case, going out really far to build a big community dock system could have impacts to the public and recreation and the waterway. During the last meeting we had in March, one of the things we identified was new to us, was the idea of this 366-foot corridor that should travel down the middle of the river for navigation purposes. That distance, that number came to be because there's supposed to be a 150-foot distance from shore or dock to a boat towing somebody. And then there's supposed to be a 50-foot passing zone between boats. And the average boat's about 8 foot in width. So if you factor in the 150, 8 feet, 50, 8 feet, 150, that gets you that 366. So as we were processing this application, we wanted to make sure that the applicant did not encroach into that the 366-foot corridor would be able to travel that river. And also, we wanted to kind of think about the development to the south there, which has the potential to have docks in the future. We didn't want to make it in a way that the applicant up top could go out 200 feet, and then that means that the people on the south can't do anything because they came in too late. We kind of want to make it equitable. So again, it seems to meet our definition of community dock, seems to meet the definition of the 7-1 formula, seems to meet the setback. They seem to be providing that 366-foot corridor on the river. And there will still be adequate and equal opportunity for the developer on the south to put something on that dock, on that shoreline, and still abide by that 366-foot distance. So again, that application is pending. We haven't received really many public comments. We did receive a public comment from the owner to the south, John Magnuson, and I don't think we received anything else. But we do, as I stated earlier this morning, there was quite a bit of public outcry, public comment about that marina in Post Falls, which has several different names. We sometimes refer to it Templins because it used to be Templins, but now I think the applicant was 414 Hospitality. Some people call it Stancraft. I think they might call it Marina 33. A lot of different names for that down there, but there was about 110 slips down there, and there was a pretty big outcry over us permitting that and putting that many more boats on the river. I think there's a pretty large public group that feels that the river is crowded as it is and dangerous, and I don't know what they're going to feel about 74 additional slips.
Is that a consideration at all for your department, the amount of traffic that's on that river?
It is. It does put us in a little bit of a precarious position because our rules and regulations that we have to follow, that IDAPA is IDAPA 20.03.04, and the closest thing that I would say we have to making a definitive statement would be based on our policy statement, which states that when we look at an encroachment application, we're supposed to weigh the benefits of that application against a laundry list of factors, which include recreation, public water quality, fish and wildlife habitat. There's kind of a laundry list of things we're supposed to kind of review. One of the things I think I've mentioned before, either in last meeting or in speaking with the Marine deputies, is that we are not the experts when it comes to what is safe on the river and how many boats is too many or what is safe and not safe for the river. Mm-hmm. We are experts when it comes to encroachments, being able to look at the application and see if it meets the rules and standards for that encroachment type. I feel that and I'm kind of sticking my neck out there a little bit on behalf of Department of Lands, but I feel that if we were to receive some type of comment from a Marine deputy, from Parks and Recreation, who I think also manages the waterways, maybe Parks and Waterways, maybe you guys, expressing concern that this isn't safe, I would think we would take it to a public hearing where we would raise that issue in front of a hearing officer. We solicited comment from people, the experts, if you will, and this is what we got back. Every time we get an application for something other than a single family dock, so a community dock, a marina, or like that riprap people put on the shoreline, we send out agency notices to Fish and Game, DEQ, Transportation Department, the county, lots of different people. My team and I are not the experts when it comes to water quality. That would be DEQ. They have people that know all about that. So we're not going to deny a project based on water quality issues that we may think is an issue if the experts haven't said anything. Same thing with fish and wildlife habitat. If Fish and Game says this is going to be horrible to kokanee spawning beds, then we would probably likely request denial of that application based on that comment. But we wouldn't do it ourselves just because we think that there may be fish there.
And that's prudent. That's prudent. So I think this is a good opportunity to get that feedback from people who deal with the safety issues on the river. I mean, there's no question about it. The more boats that can be put into the river through docks as opposed to regular boat launches, it enhances the ability to have more congestion on the river. So would anyone like to comment?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Question, is this in a no-wake zone already?
No, this is just down from the Atlas Swimming Beach area, Atlas Mill Park site.
And then I'll go ahead and read your rule that you were talking about. Excuse me. This rule protects the state's, this is great. This rule protects the state's navigable lakes by setting standards for encroachments. By regulating encroachments, this rule protects property, navigation, fish and wildlife habitat, aquatic life, recreation, aesthetic beauty, and water quality. So just those are all the things that you were mentioning. I just want to make sure that we got
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. Another comment I will make about this is one of the things that we have discussed, Amity and I have discussed, is that there aren't that many undeveloped parcels left. But it would seem inconsistent to say that we would recommend denial on a 74 slip community dock, but that it's okay for us to issue 70 more single family dock permits to individuals that have properties that might not have a dock yet, right? Like, so it seems like in my personal opinion, it seems like if a line in the sand were to be drawn, it would need to be drawn kind of across the whole board as opposed to just a.
But you're absolutely right, because otherwise it's just death by 1,000 cuts versus one big slashing here, right? You know, and that's in essence what we're addressing. So I think the real question that you're trying to identify is when to say when. You know, when have we hit the point where there isn't enough capacity, and it becomes a legitimate safety issue? Is that a fair?
That's very fair, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, but we're not in public comment right now. Does anyone have any comments?
Robert Norris,
talk
Sheriff.
about this.
The Sheriff's Office will be submitting a letter adamantly against this project because the safety of all the recreators in that particular area, it's some of the most narrow area of the river. And so we'll be submitting a letter aggressively opposing this application.
Do you know about when we'll put that in so we can kind of get our hearing officers ready?
By end of business tomorrow.
Is it a design issue or is it a quantity issue? Do you have an issue with the fact that they have maybe 6 or 7 blobs of docks? Or that they go out farther than Bella Reeve? Or is it more of just the amount of boats in that particular area given the congestionedness of how narrow it is?
Kind of all of the above.
Okay.
However, that particular area is some of the most narrow. And what doesn't show in the application and on that diagram is that there are several pylons in the vicinity that that still stick out into the river. It just is probably the most unsafe area to put that many docks. And I know that there were some references made, and I hope that we just understand the references made to the Red Lion project is for the public comment, because that's a totally different project. That was already in a no-wake zone. That's some of the widest area of the river. I don't see the comparison as far as that application and this application, except for the public comment. But that was in already a no-wake zone, some of the widest part of the river. So I don't see any comparison, but this is a totally different application.
Do you foresee that your letter might make mention of that comparison?
Sure.
I think that could be helpful. Maybe helpful. Yeah. That does make a lot of sense. It was a no wake zone, an existing no wake zone, and it was wide. And whereas this area is the fly zone, and like you said, just upstream is the narrowest part of the entire river where those group of piling jet out into
Right.
the water.
I will state though also that those pilings that we're kind of talking about is not within their jurisdiction. It's in that other core zone, and we've kind of been talking about that. I think they need to get addressed, and that might be something that we need to talk about in a bigger
Yeah,
question.
Sergeant Miller has a lot more history on that, but good luck being able to remove any of those.
Yeah.
Remove any of those.
We tried talking with the city when they were putting that in
Right.
about that, and I agree. Yes, but it has become safety issues. We've noticed it as well.
Anybody have any other comments? Yes.
Good morning, Chairman. Hillary Patterson with the City of Coeur d'Alene. Just a question for Department of Lands, because we received a copy of the comment letter from John Magnuson, and in that he talked about he thought it didn't meet the definition of community dock because it was only one owner, and that it would be rented out to the residents within the apartments that he owns and could be similar to a marina. So that was interesting. Just wanted to hear your interpretation of that, if it does meet community doc, in your
Okay.
opinion.
We were chatting about that on the way over here. We got that letter from John. John sent us a letter questioning the validity of it being community. I spoke with him on the phone a little bit about it too. I also spoke with our bureau chief, who kind of runs our program, about the particular topic. The definition of community dock can be met two ways. The first one is the easiest. The rule says you must have more than 2 lots, which is another way of saying you have to have at least 3. So if you have 3 waterfront lots, and those 3 waterfront lots decide to go in together, and they decide to forego their ability to have their own single-family dock, those 3 lots can join together and have a community dock. That's kind of the easiest black and white. The second one has always been a struggle for us and for me, and something we chatted about on the way over here. I've been doing this for 11 years, and I still struggle with the second half definition. The second half is, or other littoral owners possessing a littoral common area, including but not limited to HOAs. So in this particular case, the River's Edge owns a large waterfront parcel on the water side of the trail, and then they own 4 parcels up above. John is correct that all parcels are owned by River's Edge Apartments LLC. Our bureau chief thought it still met the definition of community based on the fact that there's that one parcel and that's owned by the people that are up top, the 4 parcels that are up top. One other thing we chatted about this morning too, the application states that the slips are only going to be available to the apartment people, apartment users, apartment members. And that is kind of another huge aspect of our community dock rule, is that if you have a private dock, you have a community dock, there's something tied to that membership. You can go rent a slip at the Hagedon Resort Marina if they have availability, and you can cancel the next year, right? For these private things, there's usually some type of membership or club you need to buy into, and that is what makes it private. So in this case, the members of the apartment community are public, but I cannot get a slip at that spot because I don't have an apartment there. So it's like it's very limited to who can use it. I would say it's not 100% slam dunk that it does meet the definition of community. I think it's really close. I think that if it were pressed, I think they could have 2 options. One would be that the upland lots get changed in ownership name. So it could be River's Edge 1 LLC, River's Edge 2 LLC, and so on. Another easier thing they probably could do, which we see often, is they could lease the littoral rights of that waterfront parcel to the community. They could say that, hey, we own this waterfront parcel, River's Edge is the owner, but we're going to lease the littoral rights to the community, to the apartment complex, to like an HOA, to some type of group that would kind of manage and run that aspect of that facility, and then that would definitively meet the definition. So I don't think it's something that would stop it in its tracks. I don't even know if it would hold water in a hearing, but we've heard that as well.
I will follow that up by saying also, I'm assuming that when they sign their apartment lease or rental, that is also a signing of littoral rights to it. So therefore, it is multiple owners having that shared area. So we've discussed all aspects of it. And in a broader strokes, it does appear to match the meaning of a community dock.
Director
Commissioners,
Callahan.
David Callahan, Community Development Director for the county. This strikes me, Mike, as one of those cases where IDAPA does not rise to the issue properly. The exigencies of growth have outpaced our rules. And now would be a good time to reconsider. Because living right next to this apartment complex, I can tell you, over the last 11 years, boat traffic has increased dramatically. And the people in that area notice, I notice, but the impacts have not been accommodated accordingly. And now would be a good time to reconsider IDAPA rules. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I will follow his thing up to say that right now our IDAPA rules are currently open and are going through. Put the microphone, sorry.
Yeah, you can just leave it over on that side.
They are currently going through, it is open right now. It's, I believe, in going to legislator right now, so if there is comments, I think it's still an open comment period now, so. Just to
I think,
answer
unfortunately, I
that.
think the ship has kind of sailed on that.
It may be, but I know
It's a long
open.
process to update IDAPA, and I think the process they're at right now is like that final stretch where you can see the finish line. They've had several public meetings where they have identified things they want to change. I think they've even got land board approval for some things they want to change. I think the next step is for the legislators to vote on it and approve it. So I think adding something now is too little too late. It seems like the next time they'd open it up for comment might be in 3 years. I think every 3 years we want to do it. One of the things that we have joked about at our office is, and I've called it the dreaded C word, the carrying capacity. One of the things I think you're referring to, and I think you might have mentioned, is a need for a carrying capacity study. If I were to retire and know what I know about this world, I would think that the proper thing to do in this application would be to put a pause on it, recommend denial, and launch some type of committee that could launch some type of carrying capacity study to figuring out how many boats is too many boats. I'm sure all of us have heard some type of story about some other waterway that is really congested, and I don't think anyone wants to see that here. I don't think anyone wants to see a situation where you have to have a permit to actually go on the water, and it's not your day to go on the water. Or if it is your day to go on the water, you have to go counterclockwise along the lake. I don't think people want to get to that. But I think the way to actually stop that from happening is to have this study done to figure out how many boats is too many boats. And the $1 million question is, how much does that study cost? Who's going to pay for that study? Who does that study? I understand those are humongous hurdles to overcome. I understand that, but I think that what a lot of the sentiment that we have in our guts right now is leading to that type of carrying capacity talk. The discussion of it being too dangerous, rules not being kept up, growth happening. I think there's been comments before that at one point you'd be able to walk from dock to dock on the Spokane River without even getting in the water. What do we do to not let that happen? We are confined by the IDAPA rules. We do have that one term in our language, which is also in our statutes, about our policy. And it seems to me that someone needs to kind of stick their neck out a little bit and say, this shouldn't happen because, and it sounds like that may be happening with a letter from the Marine deputies in the sheriff's office. But.
Well, that's where you're going to get your feedback on safety. So, and you know, the challenge, of course, is there's some days where the river is incredibly congested. And there's other days, especially this year, you look out there and you go, wow, where is everybody?
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's just trying to understand that ebb and flow of the congestion and then where do we hit that limit? Director Snyder, do you have any thoughts you wanted to add to this?
Well, staying in my wheelhouse, for recreation, our biggest concern, I know Mike and Amity are aware of it, and certainly KCSO Marine folks, and that is how the docks are positioned in the body of water in those narrow areas moving forward that would preclude on-plane activity by Idaho code or county ordinance. And while the county can make some adjustments, there's not a lot of room to make any more adjustments for distance. And then I'll let Sergeant Miller, who knows it better than I do, speak to Idaho code with regard to the separation of boats. Mike touched on it, but certainly that's our concern from Parks and Waterways aspect is when we reach that critical point where we close that gap, depending on how those docks are designed and how they project from shoreline to close the ability to have that on-plane recreation would be our concern. And because it's a navigable waterway, and I've spoke with Mike about this, at least we touched on it, was the concern for commerce and all those things that go along with that river someday becoming an awake zone just by default by these permits. And that's going to cause significant concern from probably everyone on the river, local businesses, et cetera. You can imagine it's approximately 8 miles from Marina 33 to Cedars Restaurant. If you were going to go have dinner, that would be quite a commute. And I would think there's residents in Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene going the opposite direction that would also share some of those concerns. So that's what I have to say is my concern is the design. Those are tucked in pretty tight, and it does meet the requirements to allow that on-plane activity. But again, a poorly designed, I don't want to say poorly designed, a poorly positioned dock could change that. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Will the Board of Commissioners be writing a letter opposing this project?
Well, I think the challenge right now for the board is under what basis? The sheriff's office has the safety component there. You actually speak with authority on that. I personally don't see why we want to add more congestion to the river. I've been on it. I've seen people riding with pulling kids behind, going back and forth and making it hard for other boats to pass or in oncoming traffic. But under what basis? What would the board say that? Commissioner Duncan?
I would say under navigation, recreation, and aesthetic beauty.
Those could be our recommendations. It would be a little more abstract.
Sergeant Ryan Miller for the record. Just a few things I want to comment and point out about. So the Idaho code that we talked about, you were right on with that, Mike. That's in a perfect world. That's that everyone is following Idaho code, obviously. We don't have the staffing to have Marine deputies out there to ensure that everyone is out there, every single boat that's going by. So the separations that you would need for this, that's a perfect world setting, and we don't have that on the river. In addition, we also have floating debris. There's deadheads. There's all these other things that are causing paddle boards, dogs that are swimming, people that are swimming. There's a swim area, a couple swim areas right there. You have all that that's going to change what the vessels can do. So if you don't have any of those floating debris, any of the people, any of the paddle boards, any of the dogs, that's where the Idaho code it would make it to where people could safely pass by. But when you add all these other things in there, the boats are not going to be staying in these perfect lines and have that separation from each other. Again, now you have the tubers. The tubers do not go in straight lines. They go back and forth. Skiers do the same thing. So the only recreators out there that are going in a straight line most of the time is going to be your surf boats. But outside of that, no one is keeping this straight line. Every time that I pass up and down the river, I have to bring my vessel off of plane to safely pass a fisherman who's out there floating, or a pontoon boat that just wants to cruise down the center of the waterway. So that again, that Idaho code that we talked about, that's a perfect case scenario that we never have. We might have it in the winter. That's about it. So yes, the safety aspect of it is. We are at a congested level. We should have ordinances that prevent no towing on the river. The 150 foot away from shore, I just think it pushes everyone more into the center. It doesn't really address the issues, but we don't have, as Mike brought up in Amity, we don't have the studies that say that. It's going to be our opinion and our observations.
And also, Robert Norris, Sheriff, the rental companies that have recently moved over there create a problem on the river. They are renting these vessels that are within 20 feet of docks, wrong side of the right-of-way. It's a disaster. Having those rental docks, and I could include that if you want to, also add to the problem there in that area. To me, if I was why they even allow them to go on the river, I don't know. We have another company that has finally said, you know what, we're not going to rent any more PWCs, and none of our vessels are allowed on the river. But that's not the case with those two new companies.
I'm just curious, Mike, how much room is there for some subjectivity based upon other factors that might be outside of the code?
Subjectivity in relation to the number of slips?
Just when you're looking at this, you're taking into consideration all these other factors that it doesn't look like there's any Amity's.
Well, it comes down to that code, and that's where we rely on everybody's comment. And I will say, as somebody who's been doing this for over 10 years, Mike and I both have been doing this, our comments typically from our agencies have been almost none.
Yeah.
So to get comments and feedback from everyone is the best way to control this, because we are so limited in our IDAPA codes, and I agree that they do need to be changed and updated. And unfortunately, aesthetic, beauty, recreation, and all those things, it's in the eyes of the beholder, and that has been said multiple times with inside of our hearings. So we need comment that address things like we're talking about right here, because it's just us standing here on these lonely little codes that say it meets this rule, meets this rule, meets this rule, but there is no perfect world, like we just got done saying. So we need that feedback. We need that talk to start, so that it's not just Mike and I sitting in an office saying, we're not hearing that, that's not what's happening, we need this. So we need more comment, even if it is just a comment. It's in the records, it's said, it's stated, but we're not getting enough feedback on it. So we really do need our sister agencies to comment. Give
Understood.
those.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, I think one that should be considered regardless of all the factors is how any application may change the historic use of that waterway. Meaning, whatever those factors may be. If people were able to ski and wake surf or drive down the river on plane to get to dinner, and any application that changes that historic use of the public's right to use the waterway, I think should be considered, whatever those factors may be, safety, water quality, whatever those things. But to continue to permit encroachments that would change that forever, that could never be undone, is that fair to say?
Correct.
Should be considered carefully. And I know that's not in IDAPA, but I think that should be a strong consideration, maybe even for elected officials that are able to make comment, that being maybe the most important. Is if you're going to change this, that forever takes it away from the public's use, I think it should be strongly considered. So I'll just leave it at that.
And to answer your question, subjectivity, we do have the ability to make a call, but if we are going to recommend denial, we have to recommend denial in a hearing. We can't outright deny an application. Everyone has the right to apply. So we'd go to a hearing, we'd have to then present our case in front of the hearing officer on why we feel that this application should be denied. And usually that's accomplished by citing specific IDAPA citations and rules and standards, or citing letters from agencies and stuff like that. A challenge I see with this, a couple things, if I could go on a little soapbox for a second. I want to make sure that we're not really singling out this one particular application, and we're not having this huge group discussion on this one application without the applicant present. This is kind of more of a generalization of the Spokane River. On the queue on the PDF, we also have a 11 double slip community dock being proposed down by Greens Ferry on the north side of the river nearby Greens Ferry. That's a 22 slip marina that has also side ties, has the ability to have about 24 slips on it. We're going to see the piece there. There's a kind of a drawing right there of what that would look like on the north side of the river. The piece we've been talking about on the south side of the 874 slips owned by John Magnuson has potential for a lot of docks. So a challenge I see with a letter from the sheriff office is if we're gonna, if the decision is made, or if someone is gonna write a letter or go out there on a limb and say that this should be denied or this should not be approved, based on my experience, I feel there needs to be some qualifying statements that follow that up. This many slips should not be allowed, this would be a better amount of slips, or this goes out too far. Maybe it should mimic and mirror the Bella Reeve style dock that is really hugged ashore. Just recommending denial, I don't know if it's going to be able to cross that threshold and reach that bar. And then I also don't know what that means with this 22 slip application that we also have pending. That is set to be issued on August 14th. Magnuson piece, who knows what's going to happen with that piece, but I think that's kind of the rest of the areas that are still left to be developed. There's always some parcels that can get split. Some people might have a 200-foot frontage that they decide to split up and try to make money off of. But again, I want to make sure that we're kind of thinking of the Spokane River as a whole, and we're not really kind of really focusing just on that River's Edge apartment too much with that applicant not here to defend themselves.
That makes perfect sense, and you alluded to that earlier, because the question is what happens when someone has a single dock application. Is it the total number of docks that's the issue, or is there some other factor? you know, like the sheriff said, where, you know, it's one of the narrowest parts of the river, so that poses a unique safety situation that wider parts don't. I think that's what you're really getting at.
Yeah.
Right? So, yes.
Mr. Commissioner, thank you for your time. Troy Tymason, City of Coeur d'Alene. So we're looking at one piece of this project. Recall, this developer brought to the city single-family homes all along the river. And in a partnership, this developer has chosen to improve the waterfront, step it back, and make a public trail right through his land. So the public is going to develop an opportunity that if that was all single-family homes, we would not have access to the water. This project, when it's permitted to get to the water, will be open to the public, which before it would not have. So again, looking at the river, and the city owns some property adjacent to this, we could probably work on pilings, not the easiest thing in the world. We would own the fact that we do like boats further away from the beach that exists there along Atlas. It is all prepared to handle a lot of water and flows. There's a lot of money that was spent improving those banks. If I take you back, that stretch of river, when the river is interacting with the soils, it is in much better condition today than it's been in the last 80 years from an environmental standpoint. There's a lot less log waste. So not to take anything away from the current situation, but we probably wouldn't have the opportunity if this developer would have come in with, I was asking Hillary how many lots it was, 27 lots or whatever the number was back in the day. I mean, I could show you all those plans where he was just going to do single family until we partnered up, and he wants a trail on his property. So we like the connectivity for the public, and we definitely like, you call it riprap, the shoring, the stabilization is much better for our environment and our Spokane River, just to complement everything that's been going on to get us to this point. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a question.
We'll get your.
How many deaths have happened along the river?
I do not know.
We would have to refer to the,
Ever? Well, in recent history.
In the past couple of years, no boating related, specifically. There's been a few suicidals, I believe, that were investigated there along that area.
I used to go up and down that river quite a bit with some friends. I was on the pontoon boat kind of a thing. And I've been up in Alaska boating up there. I've been all over boating. I like fishing. But this river is really congested, and it's to me it's very dangerous, and you got a whole bunch of, let's call it idiots, that don't know what's going on and how to navigate. They're causing a lot of problems for a lot of people. They don't understand how you pass on a boat. They don't look behind them, and somebody's going to get killed. And one of these days, something's going to happen, and all of a sudden, there's going to be a moratorium on the river.
Yes, Commissioner, and here's a different answer to your question. The deaths haven't happened, but we do have a lot of near misses. We know our reported crashes that we have each year has actually gone down. We attribute that to a lot of the enforcement that we're putting out there.
I'd say then that's because of you. You make that happen.
The amount of direction that the sheriff's office has put into the Marine deputies to get them in that area. But we do know with the amount of congestion, we can't compete with that. Right now, this year, we didn't have enough Marine deputies, so we have one team that's on the water several hours a day, but it's not as much as it has been. Several years ago, I want to say 4 years ago, we had 3 teams on the Spokane River, and it could use that, it really could, but we had to divvy that up between the other 18 lakes and water and rivers in Kootenai County. So we're not able to currently keep up with that, the amount of congestion that we're getting. Again, the near misses, going back to the near misses, we did have a serious injury crashed just a few weeks ago involving a boat, a propeller strike to a 18-year-old. And then within 2 days, that was on the river. Within 2 days, we had another one on the lake. We yesterday had a lady that was getting off a boat in Coeur d'Alene and got caught between the dock and the boat. So we are having more injuries than we have had in the past few years. So I've been a member of the dive team for 15 years, and our numbers have started to go down the past couple years. The dive team, we all, not that it's a joke, but we all say that we've been more lucky than good at anything. So we do feel that those numbers are going to start coming back up. The amount of boaters we have on the water is more than before. We don't have mandated education in the area. We try to do as much education as we can. We have an average contact of about 18,000 boaters throughout the season where we contact and say hi and talk to them. About 5,000 of those consistently are violations. We issue about anywhere from 7 to 9% of the violations receive citations. We do a lot of education or enforcement via education. But we do know that it's just not enough. There is a lot of congestion. Again, what does that number look like? How many boaters? I mean, we're not going to sit on the waterway and start clicking how many boaters we're going to allow on there. I wish there was a way that we could enhance the education or mandate the education at the state level. All the conversations we have, it's just not a popular thing. And just to say it, we've said it over and over, we're one of 5 or 6 states that do not mandate education. The sheriff's office pays deputies, Marine deputies, to teach that class. It's about a 6-hour class for free. And our numbers have dropped from 150 a year down to about 20 a year. They can do it online, so that's about, a lot of people want to go spend 4 hours online and get through it and not 6 hours in a classroom on a Saturday. But we're seeing that drop big time. And then the amount of people that just don't know the laws. Me personally, I am a U.S. certified boat captain. All the full-time Marine deputies are going through that same certification so we can become the experts on the waterways. I've also been a Marine instructor, and I'm a Boat Idaho or Boat America instructor and a National Safe Boating Council instructor. So when I go out and challenge daily on the contacts that I have, I challenge people on the simple laws. A ski flag, people put it up for swimming. It's not a swimming flag, it's a ski flag. Simple laws. The majority of the people I contact do not know that.
Mr. Commissioner, the risk is high. It's very high on the river.
Yes, it is.
Any other questions, comments? This is a 2-hour meeting. We have about another hour and 20 minutes of content.
Talk about the Atlas Mill filings. Is there what would it take to remove a couple of the pilings, especially maybe the 2 that are like the most waterward in that row?
So, Nick Snyder. There's some funding available through Avista for debris removal, and typically it's awarded to Kootenai County simply because we're on the waterways the most and dealing with those sorts of things. So I'm happy to partner with the city of Coeur d'Alene. I think that's off your shoreline, if I remember right, to get those removed. If IDL will continue to honor our permit to remove all pilings that was issued in 2010, and as I recall, it was supposed to be either a 10-year or in perpetuity. Does that ring a bell, Amity?
Yeah, that was done, and it was a little after, I think, 2010s, because I was here, so.
Right, so I haven't seen that permit in some time.
Okay.
But as I recall, it was at least 10 years, but perpetuity would be best. So we could continue to remove hazards as they come up, and I can work with Avista on that funding. Mr. Tymason, you mentioned something about, unless I misunderstood, those pilings keeping boats kind of back from that, in that area. Did I misunderstand that?
Obviously, they sit there now and provide protection for paddleboarders and other folks that are in there. But yeah, we could look at removing some of those. That makes sense to try to open that up.
And would you have then some concerns about boats mixing with swimmers in that area if we remove the piling?
I mean, that's always a challenge, but maybe we could put some more signage up on the pilings that remain and look at the best way in which to keep the boaters within the navigable area and not too close to the shore. I mean, that's one of the challenges.
that be the case, we typically work with other cities and agencies. Recently, the city of Post Falls to locate areas to put those swim area buoys. Sergeant Miller and I were just out with the city of Post Falls not long ago. So we'd certainly be willing to assist in that, locating those areas, and if IDL would consider a permit in that area to separate boaters and swimmers. So I'm happy to work on the piling.
I think we could easily grant a permit to create some type of swim area for the public in that location. I understand your guys' concern. I personally think, if I were to take my IDL hat off, I personally think you could get rid of at least 2 piling at the very end. That wouldn't really impact the beach and the public safety at all. That would open up the river an additional 40 feet maybe, just by removing those 2 at the very end that stick out the farthest. I don't have anything else really. I really appreciate everyone getting together to discuss this. I appreciate your guys' effort with a letter that will be sent. Just to kind of rehash some of the deadlines, the River's Edge apartment application is set for closure of public comment on August 4th. And the one in Post Falls down by Greens Ferry is set for public closure comment on August 14th. If someone is going to be submitting some type of letter, primarily in opposition, I would encourage you to cite any type of data, research, citation possible, along with maybe like a recommendation. I don't know. Thinking in particular with the 74 slip one, would 10 be acceptable? I don't know. It's a really hard position to put somebody in, but I guess are we looking at it as an all or nothing? Or are we looking at it as just too many in that location? I totally understand and appreciate your comment about the location. I don't think, initially, I guess I would say I had a little bit of a concern about a precedent being set, but I think that every location is unique. And you're spot on that the Templins location is apples to oranges to this location. So I guess professionally, I'm not too worried about a precedent being set with a decision on this one. But again, we have a 24 slip coming, and we've got other single-family docks coming too. So,
Well, I think the moral to this is that you need more comment. And so it's incumbent upon all the agencies to provide that to you. So any other comments, thoughts?
Commissioner, Sergeant Ryan Miller again. I guess, is there a way to, as Mike brought up before, get some direction on what, is there a number? Is there a number that is too many? I mean, I believe that there's around 500 plus homes on the Spokane River. How many do have docks? How many docks do we actually have? What would be that number? In addition, something that kind of the devil's advocate that I brought up before is by adding docks, are these adding new boats, new boaters to the area, or is it actually reducing congestion on the roadways and the boat launches? However, if we don't have any type of number where we're going to draw that line in the sand, then the boat launches are going to get full again. So even if we're reducing congestion, are we doing it for a couple of years, and then those boat launches will be full, and then we also added 300-400 more boats to the water. So is there some way to get that direction on where, who's the last person to get a boat, whether it's 100 single family boat docks or one big 100 slip? Is there a number or a way we can find that out?
Well, Mike alluded to that with a study, because the study is what people have to fall back on. It would supposedly have some science behind it, where our thoughts could be construed as arbitrary. What basis did we have for determining that number? And is that number based on number of docks or number of boats? And then how many boats are in the river? Because as you know, this year we have a lot less boats or a lot less boaters compared to previous years, but we've also added more docks since then, right? So what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I think when we can figure that out and have something that has a basis behind it, then Department of Lands will be able to make better decisions based upon that, if I'm hearing you correctly.
I agree. I would like to point out too, we can try our best, and we could feel that we've got a great path forward. At the end of the day, the way that this would play out is in front of a hearing officer who is a third-party employee of the state. They're not employed by Department of Lands. They're third-party, work for Department of, or Office of Administrative Hearings. They would make a recommended order, and then the Director of Department of Lands would be counseled by his own legal counsel who would make a final order. So while all of us could be in agreement in this room, Amity and I could be in agreement in the office, at the end of the day, the Director of Department of Lands is gonna have a lawyer in his ear guiding him on how to issue that final order. So, just bring that up, because there could be a situation where we put our neck on the line, we make a definitive statement, you guys may put yourself on the line, and then it ends up being that the director recommends approval, even though we all recommended denial. There's only so much that we can do. It gets to, when it gets to that point.
What's the due process for going against the director's ruling?
Very dismal. Very, very, very dismal. Not only would it be weird for us to appeal our own director decision, but the appeal process in general is very disingenuine, if that's the proper word or term. We've learned this recently, and particularly with that Templins case down the river there. We've always felt that if you objected to an application, you were at the hearing, you signed in and you spoke at the hearing, that made you a party and that you could appeal the decision. We found out recently that in order to appeal a decision, before the hearing even takes place, you need to file a petition to become an official party. And then if you are granted that right to become an official party, then at the end of the hearing, if you don't like the decision, you can appeal it. But what ends up happening for most members of the public, which is unfortunate, is you object, you're the Friends of the Spokane River, you pay the $75, you object to the hearing, you get to the end of the line where you find out that it gets approved, you try to appeal, only for the courts and judge to tell you, you're not an official party, you don't get to appeal. It's like, well, how is the public supposed to know how that all works out?
The system is broken.
It was kind of disheartening, heartbreaking, frustrating for us to kind of learn that. And our IDAPA rulebook doesn't really clearly spell out how that is to be. One would have to almost look at the IDAPA rulebook for docs, and then look at the IDAPA rulebook for hearings, and then look at the IDAPA rulebook for Office of Administrative Hearings to kind of piece things together to realize, oh, to be a party, I've got to make an official declaration prior to the hearing even starting, which is really challenging.
30 days prior to the hearing, you have to be an official party. So it's very disheartening to the people who work in the office, because we are supposed to be for the public, and the way it's coming across is not that. So.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I was gonna make another comment, if you don't mind. So with the public, you know, they're one and done. They don't have time to fuss and fool around with, you know, this, that, and the other thing that's, and then they get pushed under the table, and they don't get heard. And that's a problem with the legislatures, and the governor, and the attorney general. You gotta quit pushing away. Who owns the river? The people of Idaho. And so why in the hell do they not get a say, and they get washed under the table, and this is where we're going at right now. And it's not right, it's not fair, and it's broken. And it needs to be really reworked for this system. I mean, these guys with the sheriff's office, you know, there's been some pretty tragic things that's happened out there in the river and in the lake. And, you know, there's people that have died. And so how are we gonna make it where it's safe? Joe Blow wants to put a dock out here, and it sticks out 40 feet into the river. And then somebody forgets that there's a dock over there because they didn't realize there was one, and somebody gets killed. Whose fault is that?
No, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your comments.
Anybody else?
I will bring up one more subject, it might be a touchy one, buoys.
That's a touchy one.
It
No,
is a
just
touchy one.
Go ahead.
We've had our, I think it was, what year, 17? That we did the big buoy thing on the Spokane River. We got very good feedback on that, did really well. If you haven't been out on the waterways, they are back again. These are illegal buoys placed out there, not by having a permits, not with anything. They are at varying distances and do cause also another problem along, especially the Spokane River. They are also a huge problem on the lake as well. But we are facing those every day. We get multiple phone calls every day. And it is a touchy subject because they're considered private property and we are not allowed to pull them. But welcome to any type of comment or any of that.
Sergeant Ryan Miller again. So we did the three agencies, Parks and Waterways, the Sheriff's Office, and Idaho Department of Lands, co-wrote a press release that we put out back, I believe it was October, telling letting the community know that these were illegal buoys. And I mean, the biggest thing, anything that's orange out there, any orange buoy, that right away is a huge sign that that is a legal buoy. There's a certain kind that are being put up and permitted. So we put that press release out and then saying that we were going to come back and have them removed at some point. We haven't really had much teeth in that. So that's, I think that, you know, we've been trying to get together to where the three agencies can go out on boats using the Sheriff's Office authority to remove. And I think the best thing to do, we also need IDL with us though, because they're the ones that are saying that these are illegal or not legal officially. So when we do that together and then using the workboat from Parks and Waterways and all of the manpower that all three agencies have, I believe we will be able to seize all of these, put them in evidence for up to 30 days, and then they can be properly removed. And anyone that wants to come claim them, then we can talk to IDL if they would like us to issue citations for the illegal buoys. If not, then they get discarded appropriately. That is the current thought that I have, the best way to do it. I do think we start with the Spokane River, but Coeur d'Alene Lake is just as bad. I just was on the river yesterday, or the lake yesterday, and there are these illegal buoys that push out. They push the boat. They're not permitted. They're not put out exactly, you know, where they're supposed to be 200 feet from shore or a dock. So they're telling boaters to do something that is not the right thing to do specifically. Every bay, a couple years ago, every bay put in Lake Coeur d'Alene, there was a proposal that was put out, if you remember that. They wanted no wake buoys put in every single bay on the lake. If you did that, they would have pushed everyone out in the middle of the lake, and then that would have been a big problem. So obviously, not everyone can get these no wake buoys, so that's why they're not permitted. And then people are putting them out there anyway, and it just creates a hazard. So we very much would like to see them go away as soon as possible.
Parks and Waterways is ready to assist. We've offered a workboat, and we're happy to help. To Sergeant Miller's point, we do need IDL on board to provide that authority. We're happy to provide a workboat and a crane and do what we need to do. But to add to that issue, they're also not lit. If you can imagine a buoy that's out illegally deployed 300 feet from shore, it's not lit, and a small craft connects with that, or a skier in the evening or in the sun's in their face, they're a hazard. They need removed, and Parks and Waterways would certainly like to see IDL put some teeth in this authority. I think they've been very gracious asking the public not to do this, and the public has not responded to your gracious offer to do the right thing so far.
How many 5-gallon buckets of concrete can your boat hold?
Well, we can put 7,000 pounds on the deck, so if we are given an opportunity, we'll set up an operation whereby we can get a platform out on the water somewhere, a barge, and we'll just deliver them. I mean, we can't commit months on end, but we could probably commit 3 to 4 days, and we could cover a lot of ground in 3 to 4 days on the Spokane River.
Your plan was to remove them and to store them.
Yes, I think that's the best way to, so in previous years, I believe they were removed and put on the nearest dock to get dropped back in again.
Yeah.
So they are illegal, and we want to remove them and not allow them to go back out. So, again, they can be seized, and once we know who the owners are, if they wanna come claim their property, we can deal with that at that point, if that's a way to do it. Another way, I mean, some of these anchors, so, Nick can speak to this a little bit better. If it's a legal buoy, it has a 7,500-pound anchor. Is that right, Nick? The legal buoys that you put out have about
Yeah, 6,000-pound anchor.
6,000-pound anchor. So these ones that are being put out aren't usually that much weight. There might be some that are larger. Some people actually are paying marine contractors to install them, so they are being installed. So how do we remove that? Are we just cutting the line and letting the anchor stay on the bottom? We have to be careful not to disrupt the bottom of the river or the lake too much. So there is going to be a little bit more thought into how to do that. Also, we don't want line just, if it's floating line, we don't want the floating line to stay up to get caught in props or people's legs. I mean, so there's going to be a little bit more to that that we kind of have to come up with and make sure it is done the correct way. And again, my perspective is if someone wants to come claim them, I would be inclined to issue a citation for that. Might deter people. I would take some feedback on that if we don't want to issue citations. But it is not lawful to put them in. Last year, we had an issue where someone deployed on the Spokane River, they deployed their own buoy, and it was blocking their neighbor's access to the boat. So when that neighbor called in and asked what to do, and he said, I'm going to remove that. And we said, well, the advice was if you remove it, then you don't want to cause damage to it because you can be liable. Well, he did. He went out there and he cut it. And it was over $1,000 that it cost the person to put it in. So they wanted him charged with a felony of malicious injury to property for damaging his property that was illegally placed. So, I mean, there's that whole, it is an issue.
Well, not to put you on the spot, but how confident are you that you'll be able to just remove these things?
We'll give it a shot.
Okay. Good news.
I can see the two of those.
Hillary Patterson, City Coeur d'Alene again. Another question back on docks for Department of Land. So if the docks that are requested, that are going through the process, if there are hearings that are scheduled, what would that look like for if there's conditions brought forward? Would that be from Department of Land staff, or would that be the hearing officer that would bring that up? Because I'm just curious, you talked about number of docks or the design or how far out they extend into the river, things like that. The use of them, kind of going back to that, community dock versus more of a marina or commercial, would it limit who could rent the docks, things like that? If I could speak to that, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, if it went to, for it to go to hearing, we typically need some member of the public to pay a $75 fee to cover us advertising in the paper, the advertisement of the public hearing. One thing that we've been talking about recently that has come up, oddly enough, and it hasn't been solved, is what happens when an agency is the one that issues a letter of concern. Do we force that agency to be $75, or do we just call for a hearing because we asked for these people to comment, they gave us comment, we have concerns, now we go for the hearing? I'm leaning towards us just calling for the hearing in that case because we asked them for comment, they gave us a comment, we want to then call for a hearing. The hearing would be advertised in the paper for at least 2 weeks. We'd put it up on our website, trying to drum up as much public comment as we could. We try to hold the hearing within about 30 days of getting the objection letter. There is a statutory timeline to have the hearing within 90 days of having the complete application. We try to give the public usually a month notice in that newspaper or article, whatever it might be, of the hearing. As far as the special terms and conditions go, that's kind of a multi-pronged question answer. The first part of your question is most times the conditions are set upon by us. That we will say in our hearing statement, Mr. or Mrs. Hearing Officer, if you were to approve this, we'd recommend approving it with these conditions. And then the hearing officer in their recommended order would cite those recommendations. And then usually then the director follows through and mimics that. We have recently had a couple hearings where the hearing officer makes their own recommendations as far as kind of terms and conditions that weren't brought up by us. And then I think what you were kind of getting at, though, is the applications for 74 slips. Could there be, or what would it look like if a term and condition would be that there's only 20 slips or 30 slips. That's a challenging thing for me to answer because the application we have that we'd be processing is the 74 slip system. If it gets throttled back to 30, I want to say that we could make that decision on the fly and incorporate that new design change in the hearing and keep going. But a big part of me feels that we would require the applicant to reapply and start that process over again with the 30 slip design so that everyone could comment on that design. Because you're not going to have every single person at the hearing that change, seeing that change and having to be able to voice it. So I feel we'd have to deflect to going back to the whole application process and starting this over again with less slips, is my feeling. Did that answer all your questions?
Anybody else? All right, let's move into public comment. Do you want to speak still, or?
You guys have covered pretty much everything that I would have said, and so I just want to say thank you for making this a priority. To look not just at the current issue, but look down the road at where we might be in 5 or 10 years or whatever. So thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody on the telephone? No? 9:37, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.